22 years after the signature of the Oslo Agreement, the borders of the State of Palestine have still not been defined. The territories of Gaza and the West Bank are totally separated, and the division of the West Bank into 3 zones complicates the matter even further. According to Oslo, Zone A was to have been under the full control of the Palestinian Authority. Zone B was to have been administered by the Palestinian Authority, but with security controlled by Israel. Zone C was to have been under the full control of Israel. This division and the multiplication of Israeli colonies, protected by soldiers and connected by a network of highways and roadblocks, has reduced the power of the Palestinian Authority to virtually zero. The failure of the peace process begun in Oslo is obvious. Israel's role over the Palestinian territories has become even stronger with the increase in the number of colonies and the construction of a wall which totally suffocates the freedom of movement of the Palestinians in what should be their own land. The need to pass roadblock after roadblock forces them to live precariously. At every crossing, they may be attacked and arrested. Sick people may die waiting. Women close to giving birth may lose their babies. Students of all ages are frustrated by the long hours they spend at checkpoints trying to get to their schools. Sometimes they never arrive. But the Palestinians have not resigned themselves to the loss of their right to an independent state or to their existence as a people with its own history and culture. Their resistance continues. In the first Intifada, the resistance was nonviolent. In the second Intifada, there was armed resistance. In the third Intifada, which began in 2002, the nonviolent movement is flourishing at the village level. This time there is a wide participation of Israelis and internationals together with the Palestinians. And this prevents Israel from using the alibi of Palestinians equal terrorists to justify the violence of its repression. In our voyage through the Palestinian territories with Luisa Morgantini, we met with some of the women's committees which support the nonviolent resistance movement. Their motto, "To exist is to resist," is particularly dear to the women. It is the women who are determined to preserve the memories of their people and who are committed to restoring the historical centers of their cities and villages. Women like Swad Ameri, the architect responsible for the Riwak Center in Ramallah. Women like those who run the Wujud Center. Wujud in Arabic means existence. This center, located in the old city of Jerusalem, houses a collection of photographs, clothing, and objects documenting daily life in traditional Palestinian society. For women like the 2 elderly sisters we met on the road to Nablus, resistance is also the determined defense of their fields and their homes from the incursions of Israeli colonists. Resistance is also telling the stories of the occupation, of the arrests, of the imprisonment of women. It is working to stem the devastating effects of the occupation on daily life, as do the women of Nablus, who are linked through an association which they have created to do just this. Resistance is also being in the front line in political demonstrations, transmitting their strength to resist to their children, using their bodies to protect these children from the brutality of the soldiers, not responding to violence with violence, holding in their hearts feelings of peace and hope. We hear about this from the women. We speak with Amala, Rauda, Sama, Maza, Fatima, Yasmin, Saleh, and many others. Women of different ages and different backgrounds, brought together by a common political passion and by the same objectives: to fight against the military occupation, while at the same time not waiting for the end of the occupation to liberate themselves from the oppression of a system which is in many ways still patriarchal. For all of them, however, resistance is carried out every day through caring for the weak and through action to improve the quality of everyday life.
I spent 8 years in prison. Today, I'm involved in a project called Amal, which means hope. It deals with sexual abuse of women and children. We run a center for abused women and women who have lost their loved ones. Our objective is to help them rebuild their lives and become independent.
I was in the Democratic Party and I was Minister of Social Affairs in the Palestinian government. Today, together with other women, I continue to fight for our rights, to force Israel to respect UN resolutions relating to the occupied territories, to find a just solution to the problems of the Palestinian refugees. The peace process, begun in Oslo, failed because the United States, the sole mediator between the parties in conflict, continues to support the Israeli government. In addition, what is happening in the Middle East today has moved the focus of attention towards other tragic conflicts. We want to keep the attention of the world on Palestine, and we want Israel to face the fact that we have chosen non-violence as our way of resistance against the occupation. The present Israeli government is the worst in recent years. The Minister of Justice does not hide her deep contempt for the Palestinian activists. She has not hesitated to declare that Palestinian women give birth to snakes and must be destroyed immediately.
I've been arrested and imprisoned several times. Since 1967, 10,000 women have been imprisoned. Mostly they have been on administrative detention, which means they are held in prison without any specific accusation and therefore without trial, which means no defense can be raised. They are generally condemned for 2 to 6 months, but the period can be extended by the Israeli military tribunal. I am really angry about how these arrests are reported in the Israeli press. They generally report on the number of arrests without giving the names of the women, without saying anything about their lives, which would show that they are human, that they are activists and are resisting the occupation. As a woman, I must say that the occupation is the greatest obstacle to the battle for women's rights. Because of the occupation, women are forced to devote themselves more and more to their families. They often have to raise their children alone, take care of the wounded, and find work to cover their family's basic needs because their husbands have been killed or are in prison or cannot find work because of the restrictions imposed by the occupation.
I want to emphasize that women still have a long way to go before they obtain equal rights. The Second Intifada gave rise to a strong repression by Israel, which led to a resurgence of the patriarchal system within the family and the return of women to a more traditional status. The veil, limited movements, and more strict religious observance. Women's resistance must take 2 forms: resisting the occupation, which makes it impossible to have a dialogue within a divided society where poverty, fear, and humiliation dominate, and resisting the traditional mentality which doesn't recognize the active role of women in the fight for political, social, and economic rights.
It is important for us that you are here. Not only do you bring us your solidarity, but we know that when you return home, you will tell what you have seen. Through you, the attention of the world will be brought back to Palestine and will give wider meaning to our resistance.
In Ramallah, we meet with Soad Amri, author and architect. As a writer, she shows in her particularly ironic style the absurdity of life under the occupation. As an architect, she works to preserve Palestine's cultural heritage. As a political activist, she travels with peace delegations to many countries. This is what she told us.
1948 was the year of war, the year of the Nakba, of the destruction of entire villages and the flight of 700,000 men, women, and children. This exodus transformed the Palestinian people into refugees. Preserving the identity of a people that has had to flee becomes a way of resisting the cancellation of their history and of their millennial presence on a land that has been destroyed by the war and by the Israeli occupation. In order to support this resistance, I founded RIWAC, the Center for Architectural Conservation, in Ramallah in 1991. A team of architects, historians, archaeologists, and students drew up a national register of historic buildings and produced an archive with drawings and photographs of 420 villages in 16 districts of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. The buildings, once restored, are then destined for public use: hospitals, schools, and centers for children's activities. RIWAC sees architectural restoration as a way to serve the public, create jobs, and strengthen community identity. You can see that this is not an operation intended to preserve buildings as museums, but rather to return them to the people so that they may be used by them to maintain their identity as a people.
We continue our trip. We arrive at Nabi Saleh, a village 20 kilometers outside of Ramallah, where we meet the Tamimi family. The family is composed mainly of women. They are the ones who tell us what happens during the demonstrations, which are held every Friday to demand the village's right of access to its water supplies. These water supplies, controlled by Israeli soldiers, now go to the Israeli colony of Halamash, which has been built on Palestinian land. On the video which they show, we can see the brutality of the soldiers who try to stop the people from reaching their source of water. The soldiers use tear gas, burn houses, and break into people's homes, waking children in the middle of the night. We then hear the story of Ahed, an adolescent with a long blonde braid, with a determined look, who speaks with a deep understanding of her dedication to the resistance. She saw her mother's brother killed. Her own brother and her mother were wounded several times. Her father was in prison for more than 5 years.
If you ask us why we participate in the demonstrations, our reply is that we want the occupation of our land to end. The colonists tell us that Palestine doesn't exist and that we have to leave. But we have been here for 400 years and we intend to stay. The occupation is destroying our lives. I want to go out to play, to go to school, but I am afraid. I'm afraid to lose my loved ones, and because of this, I'm fighting against the occupation.
اسمي عهد باسم محمد التميمي، عمري 14 سنة. شفت الجندي برفع في أخوي محمد وبخبط فيه بالأرض. مسكت إيد أخوي المكسورة عشان ما يصيرش فيها نسبة الكسور أعلى. ولا حدا يعني أصر علي إنه لازم أنزل بالمسيرة عشان أقاوم، بس أنا لما أشوف كل يوم مستوطن بيسبح بأرضي وقاعد في أرضي بيلعب وأنا خايفة إني أخسر حدا. بجاوب للناس اللي بيحكوا إنه ما فيش أمل، إنه طول ما في جيل زي جيلنا قادر إنه يثبت للاحتلال إنه هو أقوى منه، بضل يقاوم، أكيد في أمل إننا نتحرر.
By taking part in the fight against the occupation, my fears are changed into courage. I must take part. I ask those who criticize us, do you want us to do nothing and wait for Saladin to free us? No, we must free ourselves. When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer, so that I can defend the Palestinian prisoners and bring them home.
The women are an active part of the resistance, says Manal, a wife and a mother. We believe in the right of women to participate in all aspects of Palestinian life. 7 of us have been arrested and 15 wounded. Women suffer twice as much as men do. When the husband is arrested, the wife becomes the mainstay of the family. She takes care of everything. She has to instill courage in the whole family and be a model of strength for her children. If she is not strong, her children will be weak. This is why soldiers torment us and our children. They want to frighten us into convincing our men to stop resisting. A man suffers terribly if he sees his wife injured and his daughter arrested. He begins to ask himself if it is worthwhile continuing the resistance, or if the price being paid is too high. We have to help him. We have to convince him that it is necessary to continue, because we do not want our children to have to live the way we are living. Under the occupation, life is unbearable. It is better to die with dignity than to live humiliated. Resistance is also the woman who studies, who follows her children's education, who fights for a democratic society, for the improvement of the quality of life, and for liberty for all. Development and liberty go hand in hand, especially for women. Palestine has the highest percentage of women with university degrees. Learning opens the mind. It is for this reason that Palestinian women want to participate in all aspects of life, including resistance to the occupation.
I want to tell you about the pain that we feel deep inside, says Nariman, the mother of Ahed. My family has sacrificed so much for the Palestinian cause. My mother's brother and my own brother, Rushdie, have been killed. When they shot Rushdie, I suffered terribly, but I continued to film what was happening, the brutality of the soldiers, with my video camera. With one hand I filmed, and with the other hand I embraced my brother. If the soldier who killed my brother was here today, I would not kill him because I know the pain I suffered as I watched my brother die, and I would not want anyone else to feel such pain. We fight against the occupation, we fight for peace, but peace must first be in our hearts. My daughter and I have been to Europe, where we saw what it is to be free, but my younger children do not know what the word freedom means. Thank you for coming here. Let us fight together to obtain our freedom and to preserve yours. Freedom is precious.
Before we leave these wonderful women who have given us a precious lesson about life and who have helped us understand the meaning of nonviolent resistance, Louisa introduces us to Jane, who is the youngest Palestinian reporter. She is 9 years old and goes to the demonstrations where she films everything with her video camera. Jane turns to us and with resolution says, "This is the message which I take to the demonstrations. I am here so that Palestine can become free." We believe that perhaps a free Palestine will not remain a dream. There is a generation of Palestinian women ready to continue to fight against the occupation. A generation which fully understands the important role which women have to play on the path to freedom and peace.